even the other day, the guy that was helping me with my luggage, he was like, so it's not a gimmick. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you know, the leopard print thing. I went, I love leopard print. I've got a pair of boots that I still own that I'm wearing tonight to the Black Girls Book Club that are leopard print that I refuse to throw away, that I've had since 1988. And they still fit me. And everyone goes, oh, where'd you get those from? I go, well, they're vintage.
They're vintage.
Welcome back to Mixed Up. I'm Emma.
And I'm Nicole.
And today we're interviewing a guest that we've wanted to speak to since we started this podcast.
We are so thrilled and honored to have one of our icons joining us today, who needs absolutely no introduction. She is the one and only Mel B.
Well, here we are.
Here we are.
This is so major for us. I think that really can't be stressed enough.
No,
I know.
I mean, you were number one on our list when we started this podcast, because obviously our podcast talks about identity and being mixed race.
Yeah.
And essentially you are our number one
thank
guest.
you. I feel flattered. Because it's something that I've always stood by from being a young kid, because my dad's black from the West Indies, from the Caribbean, from Nevis. My mum's white, blonde hair, blue eyes, from Yorkshire, born and bred. And so I've never identified like anything else apart from being mixed. So I couldn't understand it when I met another mixed girl or boy, when they'd go, well, no, I'm black or I'm white. I'm like, but you have a black mother or father and a white mother or father. So why would you want to deny any of that, any side? You know, you've got two races that have come together, and so you're the product of it. You're mixed, and you celebrate that both sides.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one, because when we were growing up, well, at least in the UK, because obviously Nicole's from the US.
Yeah.
I can tell. My kids have a really strong American accent, so I'm used to hearing that.
Yeah.
I think yours is like suffered.
It definitely has. I've lived here for too long now. I sound a bit weird.
No, you can still hear it though. That's your identity, I think.
Yeah,
also is
exactly.
your
It's
accent.
part of me. It's part of me. Yeah.
Yeah, but when I was growing up anyway, mixed race as a phrase was...
Well, nobody knew what that was.
Yeah.
Well, nobody, when I was growing up, people would use that phrase, and it wasn't like nobody had any issues with it. And I feel like now, there's a lot more conversation around what we can say and what we can't say.
Well, growing up, I was called redskin, half-breed, amongst a few of the other words. Yeah. But I've always said I'm mixed. Yeah. Always.
I
always.
The first time someone called me half caste.
Yeah.
And I was in primary school, and I went home to my mum, and I must have obviously repeated it and said, I'm half caste, or someone's called me half caste, and I still to this day remember the fury on my mum's face and how angry she was. But of course, you don't know when you're a kid, you don't know what these things mean.
No, you don't. But I think as parents, I do think it's not their duty, but I do think it's their responsibility to a certain extent to explain to your kid, this is where your dad's from, this is where the mum's from, these are our cultural things that we like, that we do, that we celebrate. I think that's so important. And I think maybe, I don't know if nowadays parents are doing it too much or not enough. I don't know where the balance lies, because I know I've got 3 kids by 3 different baby fathers that are all different types of black, mixed and brown. So I explain that to each and every one of my kids, so that my kids know exactly, not just where I come from, but where their daddies come from also.
Yeah. And obviously that comes, again, that you were saying before, you've always identified in this way. You've always stood really strongly and firmly in that. Whereas I feel like when we speak to a lot of our audience or people that listen to this podcast, they often feel like people are often trying to take one of those things away from them, or try to define themselves. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's so affirming to hear you say this, from the beginning, but also that's something that you pass down to your girls.
Down to my kids. I remember when I was filling out a passport my first was in Spice Girls, and I was landing in America, and I couldn't understand why they just had black, white, or other.
Yes, yeah.
I'm like, nowadays you've got a whole list of what you can identify as or what you can put down. But I remember I would always just put mix and I just cross out everything else. I'm like, why is there not something for us?
Exactly.
That's such an important point that I think, you know, part of the reason we started this podcast is so that we could talk about us and like, you know, claim who we are and our identity. And something we've always been really strong in is to say to people, you know, it's up to you how you identify, you know? So we'll have some people who come on and they'll say, I'm black and I'm mixed, and that's how I identify. And that's, you know, that's their prerogative.
I think nowadays more than ever, I think people, if they want to identify as this, that or the other, they can do. I think it's way more freely talked about and it's way more open. Like, because my youngest, she was trying to figure out what her mix was, because my mix is my dad's white, my mum's black, and then her father's mix is the same as my mix. His mum's white, his dad's black. And so she was trying to figure out, so does that make me, I'm not half black and half white.
Right.
I'm almost 3/4 of everything. I was like, when you put it like
math.
that, I guess you are then. I said, but you know, you could identify as whatever you want, but don't forget, you also have a white grandma and a black granddad and your mum's mixed. And she was like, I was really just trying to think and figure it out. Like, what am I then? Or what should I say I said, well, you say whatever you want, but you never deny either side.
Yeah. And being in the Spice Girls as, again, like the only mixed member of the band, that must have, what was that like? Like, did you know how much, again, you meant to the young versions of Emma and Nicole?
I mean, for me, I'm wearing my hair like this because you wore.
And that's the first thing I said to you.
Starting to feel
emotional. I was like, yes, yes.
I'm emotional because, like, it's giving me chills because I am able to wear my hair like this because you did that. You did that for us.
I think you're the kind of lady anyway that would embrace her hair. You know, when I was growing up, I didn't have much of anything to look at or to identify with. There was Tracy Chapman. There was Nina Cherry. I think I identified a lot with Nina Cherry, especially when she was pregnant and showing her bump off loud and proud, and she always had her hair just loosely flowing.
I used to love
but it was never crazy, not even crazy, it was never full like mine. I couldn't understand why anybody else wasn't wearing their hair out. I thought it was, I'm like, well, you were born with that. Why would you want to change that? Now I understand the pressures and the cultural change and ups and downs that women have gone through, especially of colour, women with their hair, because I'm now dealing with it with my kids. Like, one of my middle child, whose father is full black, even though I'm mixed, so he has very coarse hair. So he went through a stage of only wanting to wear braids, then went through a stage of, actually, I'm just going to wear my hair out. So his hair's very similar to yours now.
Right.
And I'm so happy that he's just let it all loose. My curls are different curls to his, just my curls are different curl to yours.
Yeah,
right.
Of course, we all have different curl patterns. And that's something
I think
no one told you either.
Yeah,
no,
you
I
don't
know.
Learn that.
I know. It's like, here's one product for people
For
of
everyone.
colour,
Yeah.
and that's what we all use. But it
Use.
doesn't quite work with my hair unless I mix it with something else.
Exactly.
So I think it is a conversation, and that's what I love about raising these 3 kids. My youngest is 12, my middle is 16, my eldest is 24, because we have a conversation. And, you know, I think my eldest, she has more of a curl like mine. So sometimes she'll have it out, sometimes she'll part braid it. And it's all about just making them feel confident enough to be able to wear it. But there was a documentary about hair.
Yes.
And I think it had all different types, all different I guess cultures of like black women talking about it, black men talking about it, mixed. And I found that fascinating. Like, why have we not spoken about this earlier? Why are we kind of brushing it under the carpet until now we can talk? I've always spoken about hair.
Yeah.
This
I
is it.
love hair.
I remember flicking through magazines when I was younger and saying to my mum, oh, I want this hairstyle, I want that hairstyle. And not knowing, like, oh, that was a weave, or like, you know, or that, you know, I would have to straighten my hair.
We're gonna have to do some tweaking and stuff. Yeah.
But I'm grateful that my mum didn't let me straighten my hair.
My mum didn't.
Yeah.
Well, my mum actually was relieved that I was just a wash and go.
That you wanted to just
And I
wear
was like,
it as
I
it
don't care
was.
if people like think it looks a mess. This is my hair. This is what I was born with. So if anybody else has got a problem with it, that's their problem.
But did you know when you decided to wear your hair in the way that you didn't want to be, that how much of a big deal it was?
No, because that was me going, well, I'm not going to sit in the hair and makeup chair for hours when I'm actually I can do my own hair.
You're like, I'm ready. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think especially back in the 90s, nobody really knew how to, especially in the industry, they didn't really know how to deal with curls. It's like, well, what do we do? Do we just let it air dry? Do we put some mousse on it? Do we need a curling iron? I'm like, no, I'm just going to sit here and scrunch it a little bit. Maybe let the wind get it. And if I want it bigger, maybe I will use that L-net that all you white ladies in the Spice Girls are using just to get it even bigger. But to me, it was just, not just only was it convenience, but that was part of me. Be foreign to me to like make my hair smaller or try and hide it. Like, and especially being at school, I was known as, what would I get called at school? Pineapple girl.
I was called Pineapple Head
because I used to wear my hair up and it would just be out, because wearing it out all the time, especially, I mean, not that we'd get that much summers here, but it'd be like, oh God, and you'd be sweating and then you get one wet
It's hot. It's hot with
so
this much
I would
hair.
wear it up and it'd just be like that. And I go, well, yeah, I'm Pineapple Girl. That's me. That's my hair. And wait till I take it down.
Wait till you see that.
Exactly. Oh, I love that. I love that so much.
Were there other moments, because that feels like a point of difference, like where you mentioned that other girls would be getting their hair done in one way, and you're like, this is how I wear my hair, and you were pressured to wear your hair in a certain way. You're like, no, I'm not going to do that.
There was one point where it was a case of, well, can we just make it look neater? And that made me go, well, no, I'm going to make it look even more crazier and more and even bigger.
Yeah.
And then what I did is I'd highlight the ends also, so it wasn't just like it was like
I remember that. Looks so
And so
well.
when we got our Spice Girls dolls, I was like, I need her to have highlights and I need her hair to be bigger than her actual head, please.
I love that.
Because that was just me. And I think it wasn't a thing of I'm making a stance.
Yeah.
Even though I have had like ladies and guys come up to me going, oh, you don't, like what you said, you don't know what a difference that made.
Yeah.
And I think if I would have known that, I don't know, because I was
if you would have acted the
quite
same way,
shy.
Yeah.
Even though I am still very out there and extrovert, but that was just me. I think if somebody focused on it, I would have gone, oh, well, focus on everything else because it's the full package.
Yeah. Right.
But I am glad it did make a difference, because we should celebrate what we have.
Yeah.
And what we naturally have.
Exactly.
And also, I think that's why it's so important. Representation still matters.
It is important.
And you say, oh, I think you would have worn your, I think you would have celebrated your hair. I don't know if I would have, because I didn't have anyone to see.
Yeah.
But I didn't necessarily have anyone that I could go, right, I look like that girl. I mean, Nina Cherry was the closest thing that I got to.
Yeah.
I think maybe if we lived in America, we would have had more representation.
Yeah.
But for me, it was more about, I think because my parents raised me to kind of not be confident, but to be morally correct and stand your ground. So if somebody would have told me, don't do this, and if it didn't feel right to me, I would not have done it. Like, it didn't feel right to me braiding my hair. Why would I do it? Because what? It's too crazy for you? Well, this is how I came out. This is what I've been born with. And I think, apart from Nina Cherry, that was the only one. So I'm not sure if Nina Cherry gave me that confidence to wear it out, because hers was very loose curls.
Yeah, it was different.
Yeah, I think my thing was, it's just part of me, just like my accent is, just like I speak with my hands, and I'll tell you the truth, and I will also stand corrected if I am wrong. But I like conversation. I like to just be and feel like me and who I am.
Yeah, it really reminds me also. I mean, you're talking about your confidence and this incredible big and warm personality that you have. It reminds me of, I was listening to your episode with Elizabeth Day about the scary moniker and how, people are like really take umbrage with it now, but it's something that you really owned and felt like was a huge part of you. Yeah. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, because again, it's something that made me feel confident as a young person looking to you and thinking, oh, I was like, oh, I'm really nervous. I don't want to be too big or too loud or too much, take up too much space. And then I see you and you are doing all of those things.
Well, as well, you know, from being young, I got into the Spice Girls when I was like 18, 19. So I found my tribe of girls, and it wasn't about how white you looked or how curvy you were. It was, we all had the same like hunger and ambition, and we all really celebrated each individual person. Be like, I wouldn't wear what baby wears. I wouldn't put my hair in pigtail. I'll put mine in like space knots. That's about it. Or I wouldn't wear a black dress. I probably would to dinner now. But back then we all came to the party as we were. And we were 5 girls that looked completely different. And our thing was, you can look so different, but you can still have the same beliefs and same ambitions as the next girl. But you can just celebrate, and there's power in numbers, especially. And we don't all have to look like we've come from the same clan, because we're not clearly all from the same clan. But back to your question when you said about being the only mixed brown-skinned girl in the group. Now, I didn't really feel it until I went to places like, when we went to South Africa and we visited Nelson Mandela, and we went to Sun City, I felt the racism there, and the other girls were absolutely appalled. I remember I walked into a shop and this white woman walked out of the shop. And my other Spice Girls were like, that is disgusting. And I think they complained to the hotel. But then I did the reverse for them. I took them, I was like, you've all got to come to Leeds and I'm going to take you to an underground blues. Took them to an underground blues, and they were the only white people in there. And I said, what does this feel like? And they were like, I went, look around. And I think Jerry was like, we're the only 4 white girls. I went, I said, this is how I feel every day, but I don't make it a problem. And so when the roles were reversed, and I'll never forget, it was dark in there anyway, and they were like, thank God it's dark so we don't stick out that much. I was like, you still stick out, it's fine.
People still clocked.
But in Leeds, you know, in that day in the 90s, it wasn't as segregated. Like when my mum and dad were growing up, you know, my mum used to have to hand me as a child to my dad, so my dad didn't get beaten up for just being a black guy. Which, you know, times have changed in bits and pieces. Clearly not enough. But yeah, I think that's when I reversed it for the girls. They were like, so this is what it's like walking in your shoes. Well, I don't go to a blues party every day of my life, but just the sentiment of it, like feeling like the complete minority. I said, but well, there's 4 of you, there's only 1 of me. Exactly. But they were really supportive, and then it was more about not the colour of your skin, but girls backing girls up, and they will do that for each other until the day we die.
Just interrupting this broadcast to remind you that our book, The Half of It, is out this summer. Pre-orders are available now.
Don't forget that pre-orders are super important to new authors, so please click the link below and get your copy today.
I think, you know, to your point about the alias Scary Spice, and...
Oh yeah, that was your next question.
The kind of idea that, I don't know, I think we can often position ourselves as shrinking violets, or like kind of retreat and take a step back in situations where maybe we feel intimidated, you know, maybe it's, I mean, the reality that men tend to, you know,
dominate
women, and have, you know, much more control in many.
Well, we do live in a society that is very
society.
kind of male dominated.
Exactly.
Which is why I think it's so, like, it's a relief for me, because I just brought my book out, a re-release of Brutally Honest, talking about domestic abuse and abuse in general. And, you know, 95% of abuse does happen to women in a heterosexual relationship, even though it does happen to men too, and it does happen to same sexes. But it's mainly us women that suffer at the hands of another man. And I had that for 10 years. And I think in certain communities, it's where abuse doesn't even see colour. Abuse can happen to anybody, whether you're black, white, mixed, Asian, or whatever you identify as. And it's a complete epidemic right now. It's actually worse in America than it is here. And it's worse in Australia than it is here. I mean, at least we're starting to kind of get a few laws like coercive control laid down. At least we have no statute of limitations. So if you are suffering domestic violence, there's not a time frame on when you can actually report it. But that's if you believe in the justice system and the police right now, which I don't here in this country. That's why I'm campaigning with my charity Women's Aid to get more support for people that are going through abuse or that have been abused. Because especially when you have children involved, you go to the justice system and it's a man that's judging you and they're not going to necessarily believe you. So there's all different levels. God, we've got so much to talk about.
Yeah, I was saying again, like, you know, the scary moniker and the persona, and how, again, like how much of an impact that has on young people, young girls specifically, who mostly try to make themselves smaller.
I don't. You see, I'm raising kids, my own kids, where I'm making sure that they don't get sidetracked by, you know, Instagram or what a perfect body looks like, or we have to wear this, or we have to conform to that. All my 3 kids are completely individual, and they wouldn't wear what each other would wear anyway. One's more of a tomboy, one's more like girly girl, one's more like complete like boyish, all about Japanese stuff. So I've just embraced my kids, and at the end of the day, all you can do for your kids is just reaffirm them that you're loved, as long as you're not hurting anybody or offending anybody. You be you. And you be your individual self, because I don't want to raise any kids, and I think I can speak about this generationally, where they just blend in, or they just have to feel like they have to conform. You know, we're in a society now where we can be more outspoken, we can celebrate each other. I mean, in certain parts of the world, unfortunately, that's not the case. But I think here, especially with the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter, I think we've got more doors opening, not at the top right now, obviously. It's still very male, white driven, but we're sneaking in there bit by bit by bit. And I think I want to make sure that the next generation and the next generation after that has more of a voice and has more of a stance, not just for the sake of it, but because this is their authentic selves and that this is what they believe in. So one thing that on the Elizabeth Day podcast she was talking about, she was saying to me, do you feel like you were pigeonholed as a Spice Girl?
Into that particular like persona or with that alias?
And I was like, no, if you look at what I walked in with, it was a leopard print blanket. I've got a leopard print bag. I'm wearing leopard print underwear. I've always been a girl that loves an animal print since I was about, when did I first, my dad was addicted to watching Coronation Street. So on Coronation Street, there was Bet Lynch, this lady behind the bar. She always had leopard print on and always had red lipstick. And I'm like, I want to wear leopard print like that. And so from a young age, and I know it sounds funny watching Coronation Street because it's such a like normal household thing to watch with the regular next door neighbour drama and stuff. But I fell in love with leopard print. I even got a leopard print cat when I was about, well, it's called a Bengal cat, but to me it was a leopard print cat. I've been obsessed with that. So I wasn't going to come into Spice Girls without being my authentic self. And I know, especially these days, it may seem to people that I was pigeonholed, oh, be the only brown girl. She's got her hair out, she's wild, she's outspoken, she's wearing leopard print. It was and still is me. It's always going to be me. I mean, if you come to my house, I've either got a Union Jack room, and guarantee I've got a leopard print room. And leopard print, everybody buys me leopard print. Always. And I remember even the other day, the guy that was helping me with my luggage, he was like, so it's not a gimmick. I'm like, no, what do you mean? He goes, you know, the leopard print thing. I went, I love leopard print. I've got a pair of boots that I still own that I'm wearing tonight to the Black Girls Book Club that are leopard print that I refuse to throw away, that I've had since 1988.
Love
and they still fit me. And everyone goes, oh, where'd you get those from? I go, well, they're vintage.
They're vintage.
I refuse to throw them away. I refuse.
Still iconic.
Then, I guess, as I've gotten older, I've realised that's a really freaking good look to pick because it never goes out of fashion.
Exactly.
And like when my daughter was saying, yeah, you're vintage, everything's come back around. I said, you can go into any store on any year and you will find a leopard print something. Absolutely. So I picked well and I'm obsessed with it. I always will be.
Yeah.
I think more than, you know, the way that you dressed and present yourself, which is obviously loud and proud and bold. I think with the alias Scary Spice, for me, it's something, you know, especially reading the book, that feels like it belongs to a period in your life and a time when you were kind of at your most confident and strong.
Yeah.
So
there was an element of that, but there was also an element of, I'm in a girl group, and if I'm sitting down as 5 of us and we're going to be interviewed by somebody and he's got his piece of paper looking over his questions, I'll be the first person to go, get rid of those questions and now you interview us.
Yeah.
Or if he said something not very nice to one of the girls, I'll go, well, that's rude.
Yeah.
I was the protector of the group, so that could have been perceived as scary. But how those names originated, it was a lazy journalist that was like,
I remember reading in the
she's
book.
definitely scary, because she's already yelled at me 3 times when she's walked in the door, like, get on with the interview. I'm very northern.
Yeah.
And babies, well, she looks like a baby. She got picked up. He just literally he went like that, not thinking for 1 second that they would stick. But when we read the article, it was like, well, I like my name. Do you like your name? I am posh. And I am sporty. To this day, you'll see, I just saw Mel C on a runway for Lacoste wearing her tracksuit. So this is who we are. So I don't blame him for doing that, but it wasn't a nasty thing. He was just too lazy, couldn't remember. Is there 2 Mels? Is there one's Mel, oh, I'm just gonna do my own nickname. And that's how it stuck. And we authentically, it was like, I really like my name. And I think for me, there's a bit of scary in every woman. If you cross a woman scorned, she will come for you, or she'll give you a piece of her mind, or she should do. So scary, I love. And me being the leopard print queen, and I am going to look at patterning something like that. Yeah. I did look at, I've got my little dog. I did look at doing a line of leopard print little dog clothes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But then I thought, well, the whole line's just going to be a range of different leopard print colours.
I'm here for it.
Different patterns, different colours. Exactly. I love that. But I guess, again, to your point about there being a little bit of scary in all of us, I feel like that also comes across in the book, where there's this duality in all of us. There's this dichotomy.
I was girl powerless in abuse, and I didn't have a voice, and I was completely unconfident. And coming out of that, I was like, why did those 10 years ago? I didn't even realise how badly abused I'd been until Louise helped me piece my life back together and write my story.
Was that really
she had to
cathartic?
get from other people, because I was in a zone of, I had so much PTSD and I didn't want to talk about stuff, even though I invited Louise to please come and write my book with me, because she's an amazing writer. But she managed to get different stories from people that I'd either worked with or people that were on the accountancy firm at the Simon Cowell's place. So she got solid stories from people. Like she'd say to me, no, this happened, and that person saw the money from your account go from here to here. And I'd be like, no, that didn't happen. And then, you have to admit it to yourself, just like I had to admit how abused I'd been on every single level. And it's only when you see it and you actually start honestly, openly talking about it, you realise this is bad, and it can't just be me that's going through this. And it's an epidemic. 1 woman a week gets killed by their former partner or their partner, like at the time right now. So if it's 1 woman a week, we all know somebody. If we haven't gone through it ourselves, then we know somebody that's either going through it or that has gone through it. So if us as women, and it happens to men too, if us as the majority of women can stand together, we already know how they abuse us and how they come in like the man in the shining armour and they praise you, but then they start chipping away at you bit by bit by bit. If we know what they do, surely we can have 1 step ahead of them and be able to support ourselves and be able to educate ourselves. That's why I'm all about educating kids on what a healthy relationship looks like, just like what a healthy relationship with yourself looks like.
No, we don't.
It's the most important things in life.
Yeah.
You should learn
The
that.
other important thing that I think your book really brought home to me is how it really can happen to anybody.
Anyone.
And
It has
I
no
think
age, no race, it has no gender in some cases.
I think we get this mythical idea that it wouldn't happen to a strong person, or it wouldn't happen to this person. But it it's so clear that it does. And I think,
Yeah.
you know, your book does such a good job, like you said, of building that picture, because you have other people's stories as well as your own in the book. And you can feel the raw emotion of the other people around you.
Yeah.
So you can really get a sense of how it affects everybody.
Oh, it does.
The ripple
It
effect.
literally affects your kids, your friends, your family, because not only are you being abused, they're being abused on the other side too, because they don't know why you've isolated. Maybe the abuser's told them a story about you and made out as though, or caused some kind of a rift. Abusers are very good like that, but they all do the same pattern, and they all wait until you're so madly in love with them and you almost think this is too good to be true, and that's when they start with the disrespect or the comments about what you're wearing, or you're too loud, or you're too opinionated, and you start questioning yourself. That's why coming out of abuse is so hard. It's better than staying in abuse, because who's to say you're going to make it out alive? But when you come out, you have to really be so kind to yourself. And that's why I'm so glad I'm patron of Women's Aid, because there's that support and understanding of, you literally have to learn how to basically walk and talk and how to dress yourself again, because all that control, before you know it, has been given up, and you're just like, well, okay, if this makes you happy with what I'm wearing, then you have to remember, actually, I do have an opinion, and I did have an opinion, and I have to start now to trust myself, to trust other people, even though I did trust that, because that to me was love. Clearly it wasn't. You know, so it's a whole other journey of like self-building up and putting back together again that you have to go on, which I think women in general are used to being disappointed, that are used to being hard on themselves, but you're doing it to yourself.
Yeah, we carry so much shame.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I talk about in the book, about the
Exactly.
shame and the guilt and the self-medicating,
Yeah.
and how you just have to literally go, you know, I didn't choose that. This abuser found me. I didn't wake up and go, oh, I really fancy having a really abusive 10-year marriage. No. They seek you out, and they get you maybe when you're vulnerable. They get you maybe when you're at the high, and they know how to get in, because that's their one and only job, is to carry on abusing. Because if an abuser can carry on abusing, they get their lifestyle, their money, and they get to control somebody.
Yeah, it's...
And that's a sad state of affairs, to think that's their job. And they have been doing it since God knows how long. I mean, abusers don't just stop until, they won't stop until they're stopped. They will carry on abusing. They'll go to another relationship and another relationship.
I want to talk a minute about what kind of seems to me like really quite radical care of yourself, and doing that for yourself as a woman, coming through all of the things that you've been through and everything you've so honestly written about in your book for us to kind of have to refer to. Because I think, going back to what I was saying, you know, obviously we've grown up with you, and you are Scary Spice, and you do have this, you know, you have a personality, a profile where you would think to yourself, okay, after reading the book, I mean, reading the book really upset me, because I felt like I did grow up with you, and I almost felt like it was like reading about somebody I know going through these things. And so that's where I think it's really deep, and it hits you, okay, this can really happen to anyone, which I think is what you've really done with this book so well, and that it's so important.
It is.
There's no question in this. I'm just continuing to tell you this. But going back to the radical care thing, you do then later in the book go on to talk about, you know, finding balance and rebuilding. And so I suppose I kind of want you to talk to us a little bit about that, and you know, how you could advise other women in terms of finding balance in life. And
well, I think there's no perfect way of finding balance, for a start, and I think everybody's completely individual. For me, because I've always been, even though I am this extrovert, I guess, person, I also have a very, very quiet side where, you know, even as a kid, I would much prefer to be in my room by myself rather than out with all the friends and school friends on the street corner or doing this, that and the other. I've always had a sense of, because I am like that and I give out so much energy, I have to also hold my own energy. So from being very young, I learned all about energies and Reiki healing and things like that. I became a Reiki master when I was like 19. So I've always had that as my groundingness. And it's one thing that my ex never really knew about. So it's that's the one thing that I kept to myself. But in the whole healing process, I mean, everybody can, you just got to find your own thing. You know, at one point mine was running or working out or doing this or doing a fast. And I found a balance of a little bit of everything. But more so than any of that is I really listen to my body now more than ever. I listen to my mind when I go, that doesn't feel right, or I don't like that room of energy. I can just remove myself. With all of this, it never truly goes away. You have to realize that the trauma and abuse that you've been through, you're going to live with side by side for the rest of your life. It just depends how loud you let that trauma affect your everyday. And that's an everyday ongoing working on yourself and process. Never bloody ends. But I can look back even a year ago or 2 years ago and see how far I've come.
Yeah.
And I have to, I mean, Louise is good, but I have to remind myself of that all the time.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to self-healing and self-love, there's nothing better than having a girlfriend that understands you and that can support you. And nobody else will ever truly understand it unless you've really been through it. But we're all individual. So it's all about just having empathy. And, you know, we always say be kind and be nice to each other. No, you have to be really kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Honestly. And that, it sounds very cliche, but that's one thing that's helped me learn to love myself again and learn to forgive myself for what happened. Even though I didn't have myself to forgive, I had to forgive that person and that abuse. And that's an ongoing journey. And I have good days and bad days.